The Western genre has always thrived on conflict, not just quick-draw shootouts, but rivalries that burn slow, fueled by revenge, greed, or survival. These showdowns gave us cinema's most unforgettable moments, where tension builds until only one side walks away. From dusty standoffs to psychological warfare, these conflicts shaped our understanding of heroism and villainy. Some ended in blood, others in haunting silence, but each left an indelible mark on film history. At the top of this list sits a rivalry forged in the chaos of war, where two men race toward buried gold while a ruthless killer closes in from the shadows. Number 1. Blondie vs. Angel Eyes. In the lawless chaos of the Civil War, a fortune in Confederate gold lies buried in a cemetery, and three men will stop at nothing to claim it. The good, the bad, and the ugly introduced audiences to one of cinema's greatest rivalries, pitting Blondie, a calculating bounty hunter, against Angel Eyes, a sadistic mercenary who eliminates anyone standing between him and the prize. What makes this conflict unforgettable is how neither man trusts the other for a single moment. Blondie survives through patience and precision. He reads situations before acting and keeps his enemies guessing. Angel Eyes operates differently. He uses fear, torture, and cold execution to get what he wants. Both men need information the other possesses, creating an uneasy tension that simmers throughout the film. Their methods clash constantly, but their goal remains identical: reach the gold first and leave no witnesses. The rivalry culminates in one of the most iconic sequences ever filmed. Sergio Leone's legendary three-way standoff stretches time itself, with Ennio Morricone's score amplifying every glance and twitch. When the dust settles, only cunning determines who walks away rich. This showdown defined the spaghetti western and set a standard that countless films have tried to replicate since. Number 2. Harmonica vs. Frank. Revenge rarely comes quick in the West. Sometimes it waits years, buried beneath silence and memory. This epic film builds its entire story around a mysterious stranger whose sole purpose is confronting a hired killer named Frank. Charles Bronson's harmonica says little, but every note from his instrument carries the weight of a painful past that viewers only understand in the final moments. Frank serves powerful railroad interests, eliminating anyone who threatens expansion. He operates without conscience, viewing death as simply part of business. Harmonica shadows him patiently, refusing to strike until the moment feels right. Their encounters crackle with unspoken history, and Leone stretches each confrontation to unbearable lengths. The tension between them feels almost supernatural, as if fate itself demands their collision. When the truth finally emerges, it transforms everything that came before. The revelation reframes Harmonica's mission from simple vengeance into something deeply personal and tragic. Their final duel carries emotional devastation that few westerns have matched. This rivalry gave the film its soul, a meditation on memory, loss, and the price of waiting too long for justice. Number 3. The Seven vs. Calvera. A desperate village with nothing left to lose makes a dangerous gamble, hiring gunfighters to protect them from a bandit who takes everything they have. This classic frames its central rivalry as more than good versus evil. Calvera, the bandit leader played by Eli Wallach, believes he has every right to raid the village. In his mind, the farmers exist to feed his men, and resistance seems pointless. The 7 gunmen assembled by Chris Adams represent different backgrounds and motivations. Some seek redemption, others need money, a few simply crave one last adventure. What unites them is a growing commitment to people who cannot defend themselves. Calvera underestimates this bond repeatedly, assuming mercenaries will abandon their posts when outnumbered. His arrogance blinds him to the transformation happening among his enemies. Each confrontation raises the stakes higher. The film explores what happens when professional killers discover something worth fighting for beyond payment. Calvera's final disbelief, that men would sacrifice themselves for strangers, speaks to the heart of this rivalry. It defined the Western as a genre where heroism emerges not from strength alone, but from choosing to stand when walking away would be easier. Number 4. William Munny vs. Little Bill. Two men who believe they serve justice. Two definitions of right and wrong that cannot coexist. This revisionist Western strips away every romantic notion about the Old West, presenting a rivalry between a reformed outlaw and a brutal sheriff who maintains order through violence and humiliation. Clint Eastwood's William Munny claims his dark days ended years ago, but a bounty pulls him back toward the man he swore he would never become again. Gene Hackman's Little Bill Daggett rules the town of Big Whiskey with absolute authority. He beats those who challenge him and takes pleasure in dismantling legends. When Munny arrives, Little Bill sees another myth to destroy. Their conflict exposes uncomfortable truths about violence, that those who enforce the law and those who break it often share more similarities than differences. Neither man is heroic in any traditional sense. The climax abandons any pretense of nobility. Munny transforms into something terrifying, and Little Bill faces the consequences of every cruelty he justified in the name of order. This rivalry deconstructed the Western genre itself, questioning whether audiences ever truly understood the violence they celebrated. It remains one of cinema's most powerful examinations of morality and myth. Number 5. John Russell vs. Society. Prejudice becomes the true villain when a white man raised among Apaches finds himself judged by people who consider themselves civilized. This film presents a rivalry unlike typical Western showdowns. There is no single antagonist, but rather an entire group whose hypocrisy and racism create the conflict. Paul Newman's John Russell speaks little and expects nothing from those who look down on him. Their contempt means nothing until survival forces them together. The story traps its characters in a stagecoach situation where social status suddenly matters far less than competence. Russell possesses skills the others lack, yet they struggle to accept help from someone they consider beneath them. Each crisis strips away their pretensions, revealing cowardice behind polite manners and strength behind the man they dismissed. The tension builds not through gunfire, but through moral exposure. Russell's choices throughout the film challenge viewers to examine their own assumptions. He owes nothing to people who rejected him, yet circumstances keep demanding his involvement. The ending refuses easy resolution, leaving audiences to wrestle with questions about dignity, sacrifice, and whether humanity deserves the heroes who save it. This rivalry redefined what conflict could mean in a Western. Number 6. Doc Holliday vs. Johnny Ringo. Two men who recognize themselves in each other and despise what they see. This rivalry burns with intellectual intensity, fueled by ego and the knowledge that only one of them deserves to be called the deadliest. Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday hides his deteriorating health behind sharp wit and fearless provocation. Michael Biehn's Johnny Ringo masks deep emptiness with Latin phrases and cold intimidation. From their first exchange, the air between them crackles with mutual contempt. Ringo seeks validation through dominance. He needs the world to acknowledge his superiority, and Holliday's refusal to show fear infuriates him. Doc, meanwhile, has nothing left to lose. Dying slowly from tuberculosis, he views Ringo as entertainment, a worthy adversary in a life running short on worthy moments. Their verbal sparring throughout the film carries as much danger as any gunfight. Each man probes for weakness while revealing his own. The final confrontation delivers everything the rivalry promised. Holliday appears when Ringo expects Wyatt Earp, turning the showdown into something personal rather than political. Their duel is quick but loaded with meaning, the culmination of every insult and challenge exchanged before. This rivalry provided the film's most memorable moments and gave audiences one of cinema's greatest antagonist pairings. Number 7. Pike Bishop's gang versus the Mexican army. An era dies hard, and the men who live by its rules refuse to go quietly. This brutal masterpiece pits aging outlaws against a modern military force, creating a rivalry that represents more than personal conflict. It symbolizes the violent end of the frontier itself. William Holden's Pike Bishop leads a gang that understands their way of life is vanishing. The Mexican army they face represents organized, mechanized violence that individual courage cannot overcome. Pike's gang operates on loyalty and a personal code. They betray employers, but never each other. The army functions as a machine, crushing opposition through numbers and firepower. When one of Pike's men falls into military hands, the gang faces an impossible choice. Walking away means survival. Going back means almost certain death. The decision they make defines everything the film wants to say about honor among thieves. The climactic battle remains one of cinema's most visceral sequences. Sam Peckinpah choreographed carnage that shocked audiences in 1969 and still carries power today. Neither side emerges victorious in any meaningful sense. The outlaws achieve a final moment of defiance, while the army simply absorbs their resistance. This rivalry closed the book on romantic notions of Western outlaws. Number 8. Tuco vs. Blondie. Partnership and betrayal blend together when two schemers need each other, but cannot stop double-crossing at every opportunity. Eli Wallach's Tuco operates on pure survival instinct, loud, emotional, and perpetually scheming. Clint Eastwood's Blondie calculates every move with cold precision. together they run a bounty scam that requires absolute trust. Apart, they spend the film trying to destroy each other. Their arrangement seems simple. Blondie turns Tuco in for reward money, then shoots the rope at his hanging, and they split the profits. But Blondie abandons Tuco in the desert, sparking a vendetta that drives much of the story. Tuco's revenge nearly kills Blondie before circumstances force them back together. Neither can reach the buried gold without information only the other possesses. Mutual dependence fuels mutual hatred. What makes this rivalry unforgettable is its dark humor. These men torment each other with genuine cruelty, yet their chemistry creates comedy amid the violence. Tuco's outrage and Blondie's indifference play off each other perfectly. By the film's end, their relationship remains exactly as unstable as when it began. This dynamic gave the movie its energy and unpredictability. Number 9. The Stranger versus the Town. A community's buried sins rise to the surface when a mysterious drifter arrives with unclear intentions. Clint Eastwood directed and starred in this dark western that turns an entire town into the antagonist. The citizens of Lago hide a terrible secret. They allowed their previous sheriff to be whipped to death while doing nothing to intervene. Now someone has come who seems to know exactly what they did. The stranger demands increasingly bizarre concessions in exchange for protection against outlaws returning for revenge. He forces the townspeople to paint every building red and rename the town Hell. His requests humiliate and expose them, stripping away their respectable facades. The conflict operates on psychological and possibly supernatural levels, with the stranger's true identity remaining deliberately ambiguous throughout. This rivalry works because the town deserves everything happening to them. Eastwood created a western where the hero might actually be a ghost or demon delivering judgment. The community's guilt transforms ordinary citizens into villains, and their punishment feels both excessive and earned. The film challenged Western conventions by making collective cowardice the real enemy. Number 10. Anton Chigurh versus Llewellyn Moss. A chance discovery in the desert sets an ordinary man against an unstoppable force of violence. Javier Bardem's Anton Chigurh pursues with the patience of death itself, while Josh Brolin's Llewellyn Moss relies on veteran instincts and desperate improvisation. The Coen brothers crafted a rivalry where the hunter never rushes and the hunted never stops running. What begins as a crime thriller becomes something far more unsettling. Moss finds a drug deal gone wrong and takes the money, believing he can outsmart whoever comes looking. Chigurh operates by his own twisted philosophy, using a coin flip to determine fates and viewing himself as an instrument of inevitability. The two men share almost no screen time together, yet their cat-and-mouse game dominates the film. Every decision Moss makes, Chigurh seems to anticipate. The rivalry refuses traditional resolution. There is no climactic showdown, no satisfying confrontation where skill determines the winner. Instead, the film presents violence as random and meaning as absent. This approach shocked audiences expecting Western conventions, but it perfectly captured the story's bleak worldview. Chigurh represents a new kind of evil, one that cannot be reasoned with or outrun. Number 11. Pat Garrett versus Billy the Kid. Friendship becomes tragedy when one man accepts a badge and the other refuses to change. Sam Peckinpah's Western explores a rivalry born not from hatred, but from diverging paths. Pat Garrett once rode alongside Billy, sharing the outlaw life and its freedoms. Now he hunts his former friend, driven by pragmatism and the understanding that the old ways cannot survive. Billy sees the betrayal clearly, but cannot bring himself to simply disappear. The film moves with mournful inevitability. Garrett takes no pleasure in his mission. Each step toward Billy feels like a piece of himself dying. Billy remains defiant, surrounded by loyal friends who cannot protect him from what approaches. Their encounters carry weight because both men understand how this ends. Neither wants the confrontation, yet neither will step aside. History has already written the conclusion. Peckinpah fills the story with fading figures and dusty landscapes that mirror the dying West. Bob Dylan's haunting score amplifies the melancholy, turning a manhunt into a meditation on loyalty and loss. When Garrett finally completes his task, victory feels indistinguishable from defeat. This rivalry captured the moment when the frontier turned against its own legends and forced them to destroy each other. Number 12. Captain Call versus Blue Duck. Evil without conscience meets discipline without compromise in this sprawling television epic. Blue Duck represents pure savagery, a renegade who tortures, kills, and kidnaps without hesitation or remorse. Tommy Lee Jones's Woodrow Call embodies frontier justice, believing that order must be imposed regardless of personal cost. Their paths cross through violence inflicted on people Call has sworn to protect, making the conflict deeply personal. Blue Duck operates beyond any code. He enjoys cruelty and views civilization as weakness to exploit. His capture of Lorena and the horrors she endures galvanize the cattle drive's participants into action. Call pursues with cold determination, recognizing Blue Duck as everything the frontier must eliminate to survive. The rivalry extends beyond two men, into a clash between chaos and the fragile structures humans build against it. The eventual confrontation carries weight accumulated across hours of storytelling. Blue Duck's fate delivers satisfaction, while reminding viewers how much damage one man can inflict. Call's relentless pursuit defines his character, a man who cannot rest while evil remains unpunished. This rivalry anchored the miniseries' exploration of civilization's brutal cost and gave audiences a villain worth despising. Number 13. Wyatt Earp versus the Cowboys. One lawman against an entire criminal organization, a rivalry that escalates from legal conflict into open warfare. The Cowboys operate as a gang with matching red sashes, intimidating Tombstone through numbers and ruthlessness. Kurt Russell's Wyatt Earp initially wants only peace and profit, hoping to avoid the violence that defined his past. The Cowboys make neutrality impossible through provocation and bloodshed. The gunfight at the OK Corral serves as the rivalry's first explosion, but not its conclusion. When the Cowboys retaliate against Wyatt's family, the conflict transforms completely. Earp abandons legal methods and assembles a posse dedicated to extermination rather than arrest. His famous declaration, "You tell him I'm coming and hell's coming with me," marks the shift from lawman to avenger. The Cowboys face something they never anticipated, a man with nothing left to lose. The vendetta ride that follows delivers relentless action as Earp systematically dismantles the gang. Each encounter demonstrates how personal fury can overwhelm organized opposition. The Cowboys' strength becomes weakness, their visibility makes them targets. This rivalry drove the film's second half with momentum that never slows, transforming a historical drama into a revenge thriller. Number 14. Django vs. Major Jackson. A coffin dragged through mud contains the instrument of vengeance against a man who embodies cruelty and hatred. Sergio Corbucci's influential spaghetti western introduced a hero defined by mystery and a villain defined by brutality. Major Jackson commands a gang of hooded riders who terrorize the region, killing anyone who opposes their twisted ideology. Franco Nero's Django arrives with singular purpose and a secret weapon that will level the odds. The film wastes no time establishing Major Jackson's villainy. His men execute innocent people for entertainment, and he rules through terror rather than respect. Django's motivations remain obscured initially, but his willingness to confront Jackson alone signals deep personal stakes. The rivalry builds through escalating violence, each confrontation more savage than the last. Corbucci shot the conflict with operatic intensity that influenced countless filmmakers. When Django finally unleashes what his coffin contains, the moment delivers cathartic destruction. The machine gun hidden inside tears through Jackson's forces with brutal efficiency. Yet the victory comes at tremendous cost, and Django's own suffering intensifies before the story concludes. This rivalry exemplified the spaghetti western's willingness to push violence and emotion beyond Hollywood boundaries. Number 15. Sheriff Bell vs. Anton Chigurh. A lawman watches his world become unrecognizable, haunted by evil he cannot comprehend or confront. Tommy Lee Jones's Sheriff Bell narrates this modern western with weary resignation, trying to make sense of violence that follows no rules he understands. Javier Bardem's Chigurh moves through the story like a force of nature, methodical, philosophical, and completely without mercy. Their rivalry exists almost entirely through contemplation rather than confrontation. Bell investigates the carnage Chigurh leaves behind, always arriving too late. Each crime scene deepens his despair about what the world has become. He represents traditional values, duty, courage, protecting the innocent, while Chigurh embodies something new and terrifying. The sheriff's conversations with his uncle reveal a man questioning whether he ever truly understood violence or simply encountered gentler versions of it. The two men never face each other in combat. Bell approaches a room where Chigurh waits, then finds it empty, or perhaps chooses not to enter. This deliberate anticlimax carries more weight than any shootout could provide. The rivalry ultimately concerns Bell's soul rather than his survival. Chigurh continues unchanged while Bell retires, overwhelmed by a world where evil no longer bothers explaining itself. Number 16. Josie Wales versus Union Loyalists. The Civil War ends for most, but not for a man whose family was slaughtered by uniformed raiders. Clint Eastwood's Josie Wales refuses to surrender when his fellow guerrillas lay down arms, and that decision marks him for death. The Union Loyalists who destroyed his home now hunt him across the frontier, determined to eliminate the last holdout. Wales wants only to be left alone, but his enemies will not grant him peace. Senator Fletcher and Captain Terrell lead the pursuit, though their motivations differ sharply. Fletcher feels conflicted about hunting men he once promised amnesty. Terrell, who commanded the raid that killed Wales's wife and son, pursues with personal venom. The film follows Wales as he reluctantly gathers a new family of outcasts, each person drawn to his quiet strength, despite the danger his presence brings. His enemies see a rebel refusing to accept defeat. His companions see a protector. Every confrontation reinforces Wales's skill and determination. He dispatches bounty hunters and soldiers with efficiency born from years of violence. Yet the film's heart lies not in combat, but in Wales's gradual return to humanity. The rivalry drives him forward, while the relationships he builds offer something worth stopping for. When resolution finally comes, it arrives through exhaustion rather than victory, both sides simply running out of reasons to continue fighting. Number 17. Sabata vs. Banjo. A town robbery brings two dangerous men into collision, each convinced he can outwit the other. Lee Van Cleef's Sabata operates with precision and gadgets that border on theatrical, a trick rifle, hidden derringers, and schemes within schemes. William Berger's Banjo masks his lethality behind a musical instrument that conceals a deadly secret. Their initial partnership quickly sours as both men maneuver for the larger prize. The Stolen Army Strongbox draws various parties into conflict, but Sabata and Banjo recognize each other as the real threats. Banjo works for the corrupt boss behind the robbery, feeding information while pursuing his own agenda. Sabata manipulates everyone, selling his allegiance to the highest bidder while secretly dismantling the entire operation. Their rivalry plays out through deception rather than direct confrontation, each man probing for advantage. What elevates this conflict is its playful intelligence. Both characters enjoy the game as much as the prize, exchanging knowing glances and veiled threats. The film embraces its absurdity. Sabata's impossible shots and Banjo's weaponized instrument create a world where style matters as much as substance. Their final reckoning delivers satisfaction because viewers have watched two masters of manipulation finally run out of tricks. This rivalry made the film a spaghetti western cult favorite. Number 18. Butch Cassidy and Sundance versus the Law. Charm cannot outrun progress forever, no matter how cleverly it tries. Paul Newman and Robert Redford became icons playing outlaws whose greatest enemy is not any single lawman, but the relentless modernization of pursuit itself. The hole-in-the-wall gang robs trains with casual expertise until the railroad hires specialists who will not stop following. Suddenly, the old tricks no longer work. The posse chasing Butch and Sundance never tires, never loses the trail, and never negotiates. This faceless persistence terrifies the outlaws more than any gunfight could. They cannot identify their pursuers or understand their methods. Every escape leads only to another sighting on the horizon. The film transforms a chase into existential dread. The West no longer has room for romantic criminals who rob with wit instead of cruelty. Fleeing to Bolivia offers temporary respite, but not salvation. The duo attempts to go straight before circumstances pull them back to outlawry. Their final stand against Bolivian forces echoes the inescapable pursuit they fled. Different continent, same ending. This rivalry worked because the antagonist was abstract rather than personal. Butch and Sundance fought against time itself, and time never loses. Number 19. Woodrow Call versus the Frontier. Some men cannot stop fighting even when no enemies remain. Tommy Lee Jones portrays Woodrow Call as a figure defined entirely by purpose, ranching, ranging, driving cattle north, who discovers that accomplishment brings no peace. His rivalry exists not with any person, but with the wilderness itself and his own inability to rest. The frontier shaped him into a weapon, and weapons have no function without conflict. The cattle drive to Montana gives Call direction, but reaching the destination solves nothing. Along the way, he loses friends, witnesses senseless death, and confronts the emptiness waiting beyond every horizon. His emotional distance from those who love him becomes its own battleground. Gus McCrae understands his partner's affliction and tries repeatedly to draw him toward human connection. Call resists, more comfortable with hardship than happiness. The final journey, carrying Gus's body back to Texas, crystallizes this internal war. Call could bury his friend anywhere, but he made a promise. The grueling return trip serves no practical purpose, yet Call cannot abandon it. This rivalry with himself and the land that made him provides the miniseries its emotional weight. Some men conquer the frontier, only to discover it conquered them first. Number 20. John Herod versus the Kid. A tournament of killers becomes the stage for a father-son conflict rooted in fear and desperate need for approval. Gene Hackman's John Herod rules his town through annual gunfighting competitions that eliminate threats while entertaining the populace. Leonardo DiCaprio's Kid enters seeking recognition from the father who refuses to publicly acknowledge him. Herod views his son as weakness, proof that even he can make mistakes. The Kid combines genuine skill with reckless bravado, dispatching opponents while demanding Herod's attention. Every victory brings him closer to the confrontation he craves but is not prepared to face. Herod watches with cold assessment, seeing talent undermined by emotional need. The other competitors notice the tension without understanding its source. The Kid wants a father, Herod wants a legacy without complications. Their inevitable showdown carries weight beyond simple combat. The Kid finally gets Herod's full attention in the worst possible circumstances. What follows demolishes any illusions about paternal redemption or heroic triumph. Herod makes his choice about legacy with brutal finality. This rivalry gave the film unexpected emotional depth beneath its stylized violence, exploring how cruelty perpetuates itself across generations. Number 21. Frank Hopkins vs. Shakes Champion. A race across 3,000 miles of desert puts American grit against Arabian tradition in a rivalry measured by endurance rather than bullets. Viggo Mortensen's Frank Hopkins enters the ocean of fire, carrying the weight of a tarnished reputation and a Mustang everyone considers inferior. The Shakes Champion rider represents centuries of breeding excellence and unquestioned dominance in long-distance racing. No American horse has ever competed, let alone threatened victory. The rivalry extends beyond the two primary competitors to encompass cultural pride itself. Arabian horsemen view Hopkins as an insult. A foreigner claiming his mixed-breed mount can challenge purebred champions. Sabotage and treachery mark the grueling course as various factions attempt to ensure the outsider fails. Hopkins and Hidalgo face not just the punishing terrain, but enemies determined to preserve tradition through any means necessary. What emerges transforms both man and horse. Hopkins rediscovers purpose after years of degradation, while Hidalgo demonstrates that heart can overcome pedigree. The film expands Western conventions beyond gunfights into a contest of wills against nature and prejudice. Their victory earns respect from former enemies, bridging cultures through shared recognition of excellence. This rivalry proved the genre could thrive far from American soil. Number 22. The Man with No Name vs. Authority. Across 3 films, a lone drifter repeatedly confronts those who believe power entitles them to control others. Clint Eastwood's iconic Stranger wears no badge and serves no cause beyond self-interest, yet he consistently dismantles corrupt systems wherever he rides. Whether facing murderous gangs, rival families, or military opportunists, he responds to authority's arrogance with calculated violence. His refusal to explain himself only amplifies his mystique. Each film presents different antagonists but identical dynamics. Those in power assume the stranger can be bought, intimidated, or eliminated. They misread his silence as weakness and his independence as vulnerability. He exploits their assumptions ruthlessly, playing factions against each other while positioning himself to collect the spoils. The Rojos, the Baxters, Angel Eyes, all underestimate the threat until escape becomes impossible. Sergio Leone and Eastwood created the template for Western anti-heroes through this recurring rivalry. The stranger operates outside morality without becoming villainous, dismantling evil through methods hardly better than those he opposes. His conflicts with authority figures spoke to audiences weary of simplistic heroism. The trilogy's influence extends through decades of filmmaking, establishing that the most compelling Western protagonists often stand against everyone rather than alongside anyone. Number 23. Ethan Edwards vs. Scar. Obsession consumes a man more thoroughly than any enemy could when hatred becomes the only emotion left. John Wayne's Ethan Edwards embarks on a years-long hunt for the Comanche chief who raided his brother's homestead and took his niece, Debbie. The pursuit begins as rescue mission but transforms into something darker. Ethan's racism and rage suggest he may intend to kill Debbie rather than see her live as a Comanche. Scar becomes both target and mirror. The rivalry operates on levels Ethan refuses to acknowledge. He and Scar share more than either would admit. both driven by vengeance for family members killed by the other's people, both defined by violence, both incapable of forgiveness. Their few direct encounters crackle with mutual recognition and contempt. Ethan's hatred for Scar extends to everything Scar represents, poisoning what should be a noble mission. John Ford crafted a Western that questioned its own genre's foundations. Ethan's heroism curdles into something disturbing as years pass and his purpose narrows to destruction. The final confrontation with Scar resolves the physical conflict while leaving Ethan's soul unexamined. His famous final image, standing outside the doorway, unable to enter civilization, haunts, because the rivalry consumed everything that might have let him rest. This film's influence shaped darker westerns for generations. Number 24. Shane vs. Jack Wilson. A gunfighter trying to escape his past faces a killer who represents everything he hoped to leave behind. Alan Ladd's Shane arrives at a homestead seeking honest work and peace, but the valley simmers with conflict between settlers and a cattle baron determined to drive them out. Jack Palance's Jack Wilson arrives as the Baron's solution, a hired killer whose presence guarantees bloodshed. Shane recognizes Wilson immediately as someone just like himself. The film delays their confrontation with masterful patience. Wilson provokes and intimidates, killing a farmer to demonstrate consequences for resistance. Shane endures insults and avoids violence, desperate to believe he can become someone new. But Wilson's presence makes neutrality impossible. The settlers cannot survive without a champion willing to match Wilson's capacity for violence. Shane must become what he fled to save people he has grown to love. Their final showdown carries weight because Shane's victory means losing his chance at redemption. He kills Wilson and the cattle baron, then rides away wounded, possibly dying, unable to remain among the peaceful life he preserved. The young boy's cries for Shane to return go unanswered. This rivalry defined the reluctant hero archetype, demonstrating that some men can protect innocence only by sacrificing their own. Number 25. Lawmen vs. Rancher Bragg. Order comes to a lawless town through two men who enforce peace with contracts, guns, and unshakable partnership. Ed Harris's Virgil Cole and Viggo Mortensen's Everett Hitch hire themselves out to communities terrorized by powerful criminals. Rancher Randall Bragg controls Appaloosa through wealth, violence, and absolute certainty that no one can touch him. He kills the previous marshal without consequence, confident that law means nothing against his resources. Cole and Hitch approach their work professionally. They negotiate terms, establish authority, and systematically dismantle Bragg's sense of invincibility. The rancher finds himself arrested, tried, and sentenced. Experience is entirely foreign to someone accustomed to impunity. Yet legal victory proves fragile when Bragg escapes and complications multiply. The rivalry extends beyond simple confrontation into questions about whether justice can ever truly constrain the wealthy and ruthless. What distinguishes this conflict is its procedural patience. Cole and Hitch do not seek vengeance or glory. They provide a service and expect payment. Bragg represents every powerful man who believes rules applies only to others. The film closes the list with a grounded, realistic portrayal of frontier law enforcement stripped of mythology. This rivalry reminds viewers that the West was won not through heroic gunfights alone, but through persistent, unglamorous work by men who made order their profession. These rivalries span nearly 5 decades of Western filmmaking, from the operatic intensity of Sergio Leone to the bleak modernity of the Coen brothers. Each conflict brought something unique: revenge that simmered for years, outlaws facing extinction, lawmen questioning their own morality. What unites these showdowns is their refusal to offer easy answers. Heroes carry darkness, villains speak uncomfortable truths. Victory often costs more than defeat would have. If this countdown brought back memories of classic films or introduced you to ones you have not seen, hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. Let us know in the comments which rivalry deserved a higher spot, or which ones we missed entirely.